Welcome to the Worldwise Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to building a truly borderless life. From entrepreneurship, investment migration, tax optimization, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in.
In today's episode, I sit down with Dr. Jay Zygmunt. Now, this is a very interesting discussion. He is the first financial planning firm in the US to help those who are child free, to help them plan their investments, their future, and what their finances are going to look like closer to the end of their life. So, in this discussion, we really dive into some of the key details of having children versus not having children, and especially what money and finances looks like and how to plan for that when you don't have somebody to pass the funds on to and you don't have a next generation. So, with that, let's get into today's episode.
So I am the founder and CEO of Childfree Wealth. We are a life and financial planning firm dedicated to serving the 25% of the U.S. that will never have kids. We call it child free, but whatever term you want to use, it fits. And I'm also the author of the Child Free Guide to Left Money. And I really started this because I started the question of are we weird? And when I say we, I mean me, my wife. We don't have kids. We live a different life. Our two PhDs, and we sit around talking about research studies and things. So I am a little weird, but are we weird for living this different life? And come to find out, not so much. It's a large population that's living a different life, a different structure. Everybody we serve. And I think the challenge is so much of the financial rules, the content, everything you absorb assumes you have kids, assumes you're following stimulation. And that just doesn't fit a lot of people. And that's where we come in.
What an interesting industry, very much so up and coming. So, if you don't mind sharing to get the conversation started, I'm curious, what was the decision that you and your wife made in order to not have kids? As I feel like in the last 5, 10, 15 years, it's become a lot more prevalent. But perhaps 1 or 2 decades ago, it was less prevalent and it was more common to simply go with the flow. Everyone else is having kids, buying the 2.5 homes, getting the dog, having the cars. And that was really just what everyone did. And you were going against the grain then. So, what was the decision making process back then for yourself and your wife?
Yeah, my wife and I got married a little over 15 years ago. And at the time, come to find out, my wife has a 50-50 chance of not years pregnant. So I didn't really have a choice. I was good with it, but it's we didn't have this debate. Now, that being said, it was interesting because we knew that before we got married, but we went to get married, and actually my wife was raised Catholic and went to get married Catholic church, and they refused to marry us unless we agreed to have kids. These are the societal things that are pushing you in this direction that you don't even think of. And we call it the sand lifespan. You go to school, you get married, you have kids, you work for 25 years, you retire, you pass the later generation. That's so ingrained that you don't realize these things are pushing against it. It's the American dream. The house, 2.5 kids, wife, it's a dog. That's just default. And I think you're right. The younger generations are pausing and going, do I want to have kids? We look at the data of why people choose not to have kids. And personally, I don't get a vote when you having kids, or you don't get a vote when me not having kids. You do what you got to do. But what we find is when you ask people why don't they have kids, far too much just I don't want kids. But most of them are one answer, and it goes into finances, mental health, physical health, the environment, politics.
So, in talking about this before diving into the financial and investment piece of the discussion, I am curious if this is something that is happening predominantly from what you see in the Western world and the US, or if this is really something that is happening on a more global scale.
So it's happening worldwide, but we have terrible numbers. So we do know in Japan, it's about 1/3 of folks, 33% are child free. We're seeing a huge population shift and some issues around that. If you're looking at Europe, we're seeing a lot of the same numbers, but we don't have great data source because there's a couple of research actually working on how we ask questions to get to people, are people child free? You can ask people if they have kids or not, but that's not really the question. Is, do you have kids? Are you planning on having kids? Is it by choice? And that's where it gets kind of interesting. What we do find is that other countries outside the US, some are more accepting of being child-free and others are not. So one of the weirder ones is just the past month, Russia outlawed using the term child-free. You can actually go to jail for using the term child-free. So I don't know.
So let's dive into the core of really what you do, which is financial planning and investing for those who are choosing to be child-free. So how does that differ? And let's start at the beginning, going all through the end. How does that really differ for financial planning and just the lifestyle that somebody is building in general and managing their finances?
Yeah, the way we say is we have to plan for your life first, then your finances, then your taxes, which is kind of backwards. People are like, oh, do I have enough money to retire? And I'm like, well, do you want to retire? Like, no. Well, then why you ask me if you should retire? Like, what happens is, the way we say is living a life of Childfree Wealth means you have time, money, and freedom to do what you enjoy. It doesn't automatically make you rich. So income disparities are still there. There's still people that are struggling. But it's almost, you could have too many options. Like if you can live anywhere, where do you live? We have a lot of folks that work fully remote and can work from anywhere. Well, what does that mean? When you leave the standard life script, the good thing about it is it tells you what to do. Like, this is what I do next. What we run into is a lot of folks kind of late 30s, early 40s that run into what we call child-free midlife crisis, which is you get your personal, professional, financial goals, and you're like, now what? What's that second half of my life look like? It's really that question of like self-actualization, or what's the point to it? And we get into that a lot earlier. And I think it's overlooked because if you look at two parents' financial plans, they're very similar. They're kind of linear. The numbers change, but like the actual plan does not. Where I had a client and we started off, they were on the fire path, they were retire early. Cool. Then they started approaching what we call FILE, like just live early, which like you come back and work rather than retiring, but you do like what you enjoy. You dig into this kind of more dimmer switchboard. And they said, okay, we're going to do FILE. Then he got offered a job in Korea. He's like, I'm going to move to Korea. Then he got offered a job in Germany. No, I'm going to go to Germany. And then he's like, screw it. We're just going to retire and go to France. Like, that's all within like 6 months. And that's normal for our clients because you have so many options.
I love that. That's what a lifestyle. So I want to really dive into the question there of, do you want to retire? I like that you bring this up because quite honestly, I've never heard someone just phrase it so bluntly. And I really like it because even myself and my partner as entrepreneurs, we always want to build something that is going to bring some sort of income without us necessarily needing to work in the business every day. And so I do speak with many entrepreneurs and, a lot of them are like, I want to exit, I'm ready to sell. And it's like, well, why not just systemize your business in a way that you have the business working for you? You don't need to sell or exit the business if it's not something that you really are wanting to exit. If you're just wanting that cash flow, change the system. So I'm curious, what does it look like for you when clients are saying, I want to retire, or perhaps I don't want to retire? And then what does our lifestyle and the financial planning that goes into that look like?
Yeah, so the vast majority of our clients don't want to retire in the traditional sense. We've come up with this term FILE, financial plans to live early, as opposed to retire early. The FIRE community is really good at like, I'm screaming and saving, I put all my money away, and then I retire. But there's kind of like a dog and cut the card. But you're like, I retired and then what? Like, I caught my goal. What do I do? And I think so many people worry about what they want to retire from. They don't think about what they want to retire to. Like, what is it like you want to live? And here's what we find. Most of our clients want to die with zero, or passing lineage generation is not a priority. Well, if you want to die with zero, and I don't mean literally die with zero, like they don't really want to go broke, but you don't care how much you pass on, then if you also don't want to retire, it changes all your financial plan. So there comes to a point where if every dollar you earn is actually going to an estate, which is not a priority. And when you start thinking about that way, you're like, why am I doing this? And you start balancing this. And I start saying, I said, all right, are you willing to do that job for free? They go, no. Well, then stop doing it. It's kind of like, we have a Childfree Wealth podcast where we're downloading episodes, I'll make you quit your job. It's like, there's like this truth that you have to keep moving up the ladder. You got to save for retirement. if retirement's not your goal, that's something in generation your goal. How do you make a switch? We see a lot of folks starting small businesses, going back to school, or like doing encore careers. For some reason, a lot of folks that want to become a librarian. I don't know why they want to become librarians. Librarians don't make a lot of money, but they enjoy it. It's connecting to stuff you enjoy that brings more joy. We're always looking at and saying, how do we simplify your finances so your life can be amazing? Whatever that may mean. It could mean, like you're saying, automate the business. It could mean selling the business. It could mean quitting the job. At some point for child-free folks, there's actually a point where you can have too much money. I know that sounds weird, but that is kind of what we're seeing. But I do have folks that also keep doing their job just to travel more, or just to give them. I have somebody that works full-time just for giving. I have somebody that works kind of full-time, she works 2 months on, 1 month off for travel. All of her money goes to travel. Like, there's now a goal for what you're doing rather than just going up the ladder, saving mindlessly for retirement, and then getting there and be like, what do I do next?
So do you see, I'm curious with most of your clients, like what do you see them? Is it they have a portfolio of stocks, they have a job, they have a business, they have some properties somewhere in the world that's bringing them income, and then they're really figuring out how much they are needing for the rest of their life to live comfortably and then die close to zero or with not too much to have to pass on. Like, what does that structurally look like for someone who could really be thinking about this as a lifestyle?
Yeah, so we encourage people to do a simple passive investing. So, vast majority are all on debt. So we started with that. So a good solid foundation, simple 3-fund portfolio, set it, forget it, long-term investing. We tend to tell child-free folks that buying a house is a choice, not a requirement. Since they're moving every 2, 3, 4 years, why do that? And it's one of those tests we get to. So being a landlord, the first question is, does it make your finances more simple? The answer is no. There's some complexity there. The second question is, does it make your life more amazing? And nobody's ever said yes to that. I don't want to have to deal with the water heater when I'm flying across the world. But where they could just do simple, passive, long-term investing and live off their investment, that's where you get a lot of freedom. Now, what tends to happen is we actually spend more time with our clients on spending money than saving money. Because they've been good at saving. They've been just kind of squirreling away the money, doing the good boy, good girl things. And it's like, yeah, what do I do with it? When you get to a point in your 70s, you got $10 million. How do you spend that in the next rest of your life? That becomes a challenge because you're actually earning so much money off it every year. We often, with our clients, will end up saying, all right, let's set a travel goal because travel is very important, and a giving goal. And we'll give an equal amount of money to each. And when I talk about equal amount of money, I'm talking like 6 figures to each. Now, the interesting thing is I'll ask them, which did you get more joy out of, traveling or giving? 99 times out of 100, it's the giving. Which is interesting because now it's like, oh, how do I give back? What do I do as my time, my money, my effort, whatever that is? But they can do things that matter to them. And we really get to the question of child-free, like, what's your impact on the world look like? So it's less about your finance. Like we want to get to a point where like they look at their finances twice a year, like, yep, they're still there, and just live their best life.
So it's really working with clients to not so much deal on the property side of things, but really to have some safe, maybe stocks, funds, the ETFs, whatever that may look like, have that in their home country, not look at it, very automated, getting dividends, maybe selling a little bit here and there, and then just living your life on autopilot.
Absolutely. Because, we get to the property example and there's just so much to go, bro. Let's be real on that. Like, anyone's ever been a landlord knows, even if you have a management company taking care of it, like, there's still the renters, the other, and what happens is we work with a marketing firm when we create our website. We're trying to figure out like how do we market this. Like, you really want to say, just make your finances simple. Your life to be amazing. You're like, well, that's too simple. I'm like, no, it actually can be. Like, just set it, forget it, let it do its thing. We're going to do some tax optimization. There's some things you can do to make that better. But it doesn't have to be fancy. The rest of your life can be the fancy part.
So let's dive into some of the basic tax optimization strategies that you see that are very useful for your clients. And I assume this is American specific, correct?
Yeah. So we work in the US, and what's interesting is more of what we don't qualify for. So for example, a lot of the tax strategies are based upon you giving money to the next generation. So like, for example, keep on real estate. Where real estate works is if you buy the property, you keep it for life, you give them to the kids, they get a step up in basis, you've never paid tax on it, essentially. Technically, you're supposed to pay tax on it, but you rent it right off all of a sudden. It doesn't work. And if you actually look at the tax codes in most countries, US included, there's tax breaks for free wealth kids, that's for the child-free folks. But we start just going with the basics. IRA is a Roth, traditional, other things. But the challenge is for those that are doing international, how does that Roth contribution in the US get taxed in the foreign country? Which really ends up with some complexity. And what happens if you have international income? Like, it's a mess. But really, we start talking about clients say, if we keep your investments really simple, we can spend more time getting your taxes right. And then you don't have to worry about it.
What are some of the common struggles that you see, whether it be from the child-free aspect, the investing child-free aspect? Like, what are some of the struggles that you see with clients?
It's funny. We've asked child-free folks, are you happy? And 94% of child-free people say yes, which is huge. Like, that's astronomical. In general population, it's like 50%. But you ask them, what's the bad part? Their answer is the judgment from other people, which is really, that is the truth of it. But when it comes to finances, the hardest question may be, who's going to take care of you when you're old? So 32% of child-free folks will never marry. So we have a lot of what we call soloists, single, no kids. They might be in a couple, but not legally married, as opposed to 2.5% of parents. And this question of like, how do I take care of long-term care is a big one. We're trying to solve this for our clients by about their mid-40s because it's super expensive. It's $115,000 a year. Men spend 2.2 years in care, women 3.7. Huge numbers. And that's a problem we can find is, it's a financial solution. The harder one is, who makes decisions for you when you're kids? All the systems are based around first your spouse and then your next of kin. And how do we do that? That's something I've been working on for 3 years. We're actually hoping to have a solution come out middle of next year. We're going to actually be able to serve as people's executor, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and all that. But that only works in the US. So that's a separate choice. I was working with a group, they're actually in the UK, and it's Asia without kids there. And they're like, how do we handle who makes decisions for us? Don't know. Same type of thing. There are some countries that are actually good at making decisions for you, but they're very few. Like, do you trust the government to make the decision for you? I don't know. And this is where, people don't think about these things, but it's important. And I have some folks, I had somebody, they moved to Portugal, love the life there. They, like the socialized medicine there, but they decided for the long-term care, they're going to come back to the US because the care was better, which is interesting because be like, well, I thought they'd stay over there because the care's paid for. Yeah, but quality matters too. I had another client who tried to optimize for cost of living, safety, and healthcare. And I find a country that has good cost of living, good safety, and good healthcare. We just know. But we couldn't put all three of those together into a match. It's especially when you're looking at long-term care. And if you look culturally, many countries, it's a kind of generational homes. Grandma lives with you, and cool. But when you're not having kids, they're not part of that system. We had a child-free convention, and we had two gentlemen on there, one from India, one from Pakistan, were talking about this. They were kicked out of their family home because they weren't continuing the system. But what do they do for their long-term care? These are hard questions, and people say, well, I hope, the government fixes this. Guess what? They're not. I'm like, this is the world you have to plan for, and you have to fix yourself.
Very, very interesting questions that you are bringing up here. And I think these questions are only going to become more prevalent. They're really just starting, I think, for the generation that's the boomers, our generation, are really starting to think about these questions. And I've even thought about them as well. Typical answers, like you said, especially when you get into an international space. But yeah, I'm sure that there will be multi-billion-dollar businesses that pop up, and you may be one of them in the future to really take care of this problem.
Well, I always laugh. If you look at the numbers, it's cheaper to live on a cruise ship year-round than to have long-term care. And actually, if you live on a cruise ship, Your housekeeping's taken care of. Your food's taken care of. Your shit. There's doctors on board. Like, actually, it's a reasonable solution. And it sounds weird that way, but like, they just announced a 4-year cruise, if we can get away from the U.S., is like $400,000 for the 4 years. That's actually not that expensive when you look at overall costs. And like, we're starting to rethink this. And what we're seeing is Cal-free folks are starting to look at intentional communities, kind of the Golden Girls setup where a whole bunch of friends live together or other things. But a lot of the systems are not made to do that. If you go to a landlord and say, hey, we're doing 3 random friends living together for the rest of our life, it looks you a little weird. Like, this doesn't seem right. And what we're also finding is a lot, at least in the US, a lot of the communities are built for people with kids. And it actually is exclusionary for people who are child free. They have a whole bunch of kid-friendly stuff, they have kid-friendly parties, but the child free people don't get invited. It's things like that become an issue. And I really hope as a society we can start shifting some of this, but it's so big of an issue. So 25% of the U.S. is child free. So we're about 50 to 60 million adults. As far as we know, we are the only child free financial planning firm in the U.S. There are other people that do it. There's one of my colleagues, she works specifically with people that have tiny houses. A lot of them are child free. So there's some crossover. But as far as I know 4 planners that actually even serve child free folks. I have 50 million people. It's crazy when you look at the opportunity, but it also shows how the system is built for everybody else.
It's so interesting too, because I've been in Latin America for the last 3-ish years. And as you said, it's such a culture based on family and family values, but a lot more expats. And I foresee only increasingly so are going to continue to move to Asia, Latin America, keep Latin America because of the time zone. And so I think it will be interesting to see how that is navigated in somewhere like this part of the world. If you're still going back to your home country system, I know a lot of Canadians as well will do that. They'll stay for 6 months, especially the snowbird, to get that healthcare in the US. If you have the money, you have top tier healthcare. If not, it might be a bit of a different story. But I think it'll be really interesting to see how things progress. And this, to me, is really more of a almost philosophical discussion, because it kind of becomes like a never ending circle where you just don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah. And Japan's going to be the test case for this. So Japan has this huge generational problem. Their elderly population is booming. Big population. Their fertility rate is very, very low. And a third of folks aren't having kids. And since you've tried we're going to give you days off so you can go hook up for we'll pay for a trip for you to go hook up, or we'll give, there's some countries giving money. South Korea's tried to incentivize people to it. And then South Korea is also where the 4B movement came out of I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to have sex. I'm not going to deal with men at all. That's where women are reacting to it. In Japan, they start talking about how do we work through the system? Because if you think about Social Security in the U.S., that's always based on constant growth. The younger folks are paying for the older folks. Well, the growth disappears. Mm-hmm. The problem. I've seen some people even say to me, I've been on a podcast well, you child-free people are best at Social Security. No, we are not. The system's broken. We just happen to not have kids. And the answer for some countries is immigration. Well, when you countries like Japan, where immigration's not highly looked after, U.S. with all the politics, I don't know how the economy keeps growing, the social safety nets, Social Security, I don't know. So if I'm watching Japan going, figure this out, please. They're kind of ahead of the curve, but you also get some obnoxious answers. What are their politics? Publicly came out and said, hey, the best thing is for the elderly folks to commit seppuku and, off themselves so that we don't have this issue. I'm oh, wow. Yeah, and that's the problem.
That is, a very realistic answer to the problem that they're facing. I find it really interesting because I lived in China for 4 years, my partner for 8. And of course, many decades ago, they had the one-child policy. And I think it's interesting where it's a good representation globally. I see it as where Now they are really incentivizing having 2, 3, multiple kids, as many as possible because of the decline in the birth rate. And I see it. I mean, I think we all see that happening in most places around the world. And I just think it's really interesting because I also look at it. I mean, you can look at it through a million different lenses. But I look at it from an environmental lens as well, because global warming is absolutely an issue. We see it very much so in Canada, especially in Canada with how much snow there used to be and now there's none. But I just think it's really interesting, governments really wanting to push continued birth rates, having a large population, a large workforce. Of course, other problems come into that. But then we're not really looking at it from other lenses where it actually is quite beneficial to not have a large population. And I mean, the world is at 8 billion. It's bigger than it's ever been in terms of how many people are on the planet right now.
Yeah, and my long-term plan, we're right now my wife and I embrace something called garden the rows, which a lot of child-free folks do, where one person provides for it, the other one growing. My wife right now is the rows. About 5 to 7 years from now, I'm going to be the rows, and that doesn't always mean job, but when I'm the rows, we're going to get a boat and travel the world. That's kind of one of those trees. Somebody said to me, well, but do you realize your carbon footprint on that? I said, well, we have kids. So I'll tell you right now, I can do a hell of a lot of voting and get no review of that carbon footprint. And they were like, that's wrong. I'm like, no, look at the map. Like, people are like, oh, well, I'm not going to, use plastic straws. Or can, and these are the challenges. If people say, well, we need population growth. And in the U.S., there's been a lot of this discussion right now about the childless cat ladies and politics and things. It's been really negative. And if you need population growth or your economy, immigration is an answer. But what they really want is population growth of certain people, which is a whole separate thing. But I'm like, maybe we're not on the same world here. Like, the people that I talk to are really concerned. Like, I got some folks, hey, I don't want to pass on generational trauma to my family. Great reason not to have a kid. I don't want to pass on this medical issue, this psychological issue. I have other things. I don't want to destroy the environment. I don't think in this political climate, like, you pause and you go, those are all really good reasons. And then people say, well, you're selfish for not having kids. And I'm like, is that really the case? And usually it's the parents that will say that. And I'll turn to them and go, well, why did you have kids? And what they always will say is, well, I'm like, well, you just started with selfish. Like, you said, well, I wanted this. Like, in actuality, I'm not saying like nobody should have kids. You want to have kids. It's your passion. If that's where you'll put your time and effort, awesome. And for the people that don't want to, awesome. And that's okay.
That's exactly what I say about lifestyle design. If I want to travel the world and do whatever I want and go home every 2 years, which is typically what we do, great. If I have friends who are back in Canada who want to work the 9 to 5 and have the 2.5 kids and the mortgage, great. As long as you're happy with the decision you chose and you actually critically think about the decision, because I think not more so now, but in the past, not enough of us really critically thought about the decisions we were making for the rest of our life. I have one more question for you, and it's a personal question that I'm always just so curious about. And I know you don't really at all deal with parents, you deal with the complete opposite. But I'm curious, have you ever met or spoken to parents who, it's tricky because I don't think most will, but who will say that they wish that they had thought a little bit more about the decision to have children?
So, interestingly enough, I probably know more about reproductive rights and parenting than most folks. The reason is because every time I'm on a podcast, every time I have people want to talk about their life, about what it's like being a parent, I could never. And the best I'd ever heard from a parent who was honest said, I love my kids, I hate being a parent. I was like, ooh, now there's some depth there. The actual number is about 18% of parents will admit they regret having kids. So that's a number that's willing on a survey to check off the box saying, I regret having kids. And people always ask child-free folks, what if you regret it? I'm like, I'd rather regret not having kids than regret having kids. Like, there's not a way to like ungin that.
Definitely.
And kids know it and all the other things go along with it. And when you see 18% are willing to admit it, it's shocking. And I talked to another parent and they said this way, they said, look, I wouldn't give up my kids for anything, but if I had to do it over, I'd probably do it differently. Appreciate that. And they said, I think that if you're going to have kids, it has to be two enthusiastic yeses. I was like, yes, you are correct. In a couple, you both got to be 100% in. I had somebody for my book. He married his wife and decided they were child free. Awesome. A few years into the marriage, she changed her mind. What do you do? And I asked him the question. I'm like, I got to tell you, the researcher, that like, this is like the ideal question. Like, let me just dive into this. And he said, I decided to have kids. He said, I'd rather be miserable than have her be miserable. I was like, oh, there's like a whole bunch. I got hours I could dive into them. And I was like, were you miserable? And he said, well, for fertility reasons, we didn't have kids. So they tried. Mm-hmm. And then and I was like, wow, I wonder how many other people are for their spouse or their family, for whatever reason, say they don't have kids. You know, my wife's got a 50-50 chance of dying. We still have family and friends that think we should take the chance. And I'm like, said no. I'm like, and that's the social pressures that are out there.
And I need to ask you as well, did you ever, just on a personal note, did you ever think about adoption as an option, or you would have rather been child-free without, if the option was to not have your own children?
You know, for us, we were both on the academic path, so we're both PhDs. You know, really that's where we want to make an impact. So we really didn't go too far down that path. I think it's one of those things where if the choice is taken away from you, there's a lot of baggage that comes there. So if you look at the childless community, this is people not by choice. They might be childless by circumstances, other things. There's actually a grieving process for the life you thought you were going to live. Mm-hmm. And you have to get to a point where like, I'm going to pick a different path. If you're always kind of like one foot in each way, it doesn't get there. For us, adoption wasn't on the list. You know, we had gotten through it early. It was obvious where we were going. For others, it's a choice. I think the challenge is the limbo in the middle. That's where pain is. And that's where, like, if you thought you're going to have kids, it didn't happen. That's where there's a lot of personal growth and work that needs to be done, to the point where, you know, we call our firm Childfree Wealth. I will tell people if they're childless, if they're still going through the grieving process, don't come to us, because we're talking about what's the next chapter of your life going to be like. If you're still trying to conceive, still maybe adoption, whatever it is, God bless you, you do your thing. When you kind of ruled it out and decide that's it, that's where we can help.
Thank you for being here, Jay. I mean, we could have gone a whole nother hour. I'm so interested in all of your insights, but I really appreciate everything you shared today. So where can people find you online?
So childfreewealth.com, Childfree Wealth on all the socials, except for X, because he says childless people should die on the boat. We had to leave the system. We couldn't support that. And the new book, The Childfree Guide to Life and Money, available in bookstores everywhere. Get it and see how it works.
You've just listened to the Worldwise Wealth podcast. Visit our links in the show notes below or at worldwisecapital.com to learn more about how we can assist in your borderless diversification journey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.